First Spin. Welcome to First Spin, a show where I learn how to use the Parallax propeller without having any prior programming experience. And rather than do this on my own, I have enlisted the help of two experts.
Yep.
Except today I'm going to be one of the experts.
Doubtful.
I'm going to say I'm not really the expert today.
Well, you're not the expert because you've never used the program I'm about to talk about.
Well, that's not 100% true. But
Well, not you, Roy. I mean, you probably have. But you probably shunned it. Whisker has never touched it, though.
I didn't shun it.
Well, I helped you get
Don't
it
you
working.
shun Macs in general, though?
No.
Oh.
No.
Well, never mind.
I helped you get it working yesterday.
I
No,
own
you
a
didn't.
Mac, except that it died.
You told me to Google the answer. That's
No,
not
I told you it was a
helping.
driver, that you needed a FTDI driver.
Well,
So we should probably tell the users what we're
Yeah.
even talking
all
about.
right. Yes, I know. We're keeping everybody in suspense. So we are currently in our new studio,
Yep.
and
Welcome to the new studio, Roy.
welcome to the new studio.
You like the seats?
Are they comfortable?
Yeah, it's the same as the old one for me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm at my house.
So we are in our new studio recording with our new setup, and my PC is not really connected. So I'm using my MacBook from like 5 years ago. So it's a pretty old.
Yeah, the new dedicated
Cutie.
studio is great for like doing projects. It's got a lot of table space. We've got like microphones and all that sort of stuff set up too. So we've got room to work on electronics projects and room to do things like the podcasts. But there's definitely not room to have big desktop PCs out
Right.
here.
And it's too
So
noisy.
instead,
Too
we're
noisy.
using our laptops on
Right.
here
Right.
and just the recording computer.
Right.
And so Addie is having an issue where she can't get her Wi-Fi to connect when she's using Boot Camp to boot into Windows. So instead, she's stuck using Mac OS X.
Correct.
And, you know, Parallax doesn't have an official tool for Mac OS X.
Correct. So what they do have, or what someone named Brad made, was Brad's Spin Tool, or BST. And this is, you can find it on the Parallax site, or if you just search for BS. Actually, I don't know if it's on the Parallax site, but you can find it on his site at
Yeah.
the very least.
Parallax has links to his site
Right.
on their
Right.
propeller section.
Right. So I thought I'd go quickly through how to set this up, especially if you have a MacBook, even if it's old. Let me see what I'm running. I am running, let's see, Mac OS X software. I don't even know. Oh no, that's a download. About this Mac, I am running 10.5.8. I don't know which cat it is, but I'm sure it's a
I think
nice
it's
one.
Snow Leopard or something. The one right before Lion, anyway.
Okay. So, essentially you just go to the site, and I believe today's blog, or it was published a few days ago, but the blog post setting up Brad's BST on Macs part 1 will go through these steps, but I thought I'd let you guys know anyway. Anyway, so you go to the site, you download the file BST, and you unzip it, you put it in your applications folder, wonderful, stick it in your little dock on the bottom. Then, first step after that is you need to install the propeller font. So the prop tool, which is the program window thing for the PC, already installs the propeller font for you. But on Macs, you have to do this yourself. So there's a link that you can find with the most up-to-date propeller font. And what you want to do is you want to go into your username, then library, then font, and then take that downloaded font that you have, the propeller.ttf or parallax.ttf, and then stick it into that folder.
I actually like the propeller font. It's rather good. And I use it in my graphic design sometime because it's handy.
Do you?
Mhm.
Yeah, and it has all the little electric symbols and whatnot in it too.
Yep.
Ah, that's handy. Yep. And then so I installed this, and I wasn't really paying attention to the BST manual, you know. So I hooked up my propeller.
So what
my
you're
Prop
saying
BOE.
is you didn't read the manual.
I didn't read the directions. Yes, I didn't read them.
Aren't you the one who's like
manual.
notorious for reading the directions and then like posting
Yes.
100 posts about each page of the directions.
Yes.
And this time you were just like, meh, I'm an expert now. I'll just skip it.
Right. Well, because I was like, Macs are so much easier. You just put it in, you download it,
you were
it's
assuming
done.
because you were using a Mac that you wouldn't actually have to know what you were doing.
Right.
I see.
Okay.
I won't acknowledge that I said it. You may have it recorded, but that means nothing. So I popped my prop BOE on and I said, okay, I'm going to go on the BST and I'm going to look for my propeller to make sure it can see it on whatever COM port it is, right? And it says, no propeller found.
It was like, boop.
Yep.
And she was like, Whisker,
oh, no.
it does not work. And I was like, did you install the driver? She's like, it's a Mac. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, pretty much. I've never known I had to install drivers on a Mac. Who installs drivers on a Mac?
When you
Right?
use new hardware that the Mac doesn't have any clue about, you still need to install drivers, just like Windows.
Lame-o. Anyway, so you have to Google FTDI VCP drivers or virtual COM port drivers. So I Googled it, I found the link, I downloaded them, and it's really easy. You just double click it, it installs them for you, and it's like miracle of life, right? So I turned on my prop BOE again, I looked for a propeller, and voila, I found it. Now the thing about BST, the sad thing is that it doesn't come with all of the files, the spin files that you would normally have, and like
From
automatically.
the library.
Right, from the
that
library.
comes with Prop Tool.
Correct. And in fact, you actually have no previously installed
Now, I had a
spin files.
question about this for Roy. Aren't pretty much all of the files that come with the propeller tool, aren't pretty much all of them MIT license?
I believe so. They're also all on the OBX, as far as I know.
So
The object
what's
exchange.
the motivation for not redistributing them? Because you're obviously allowed to.
I'm not sure why. I think Brad just decided not to add the size to his downloads on his own hosting
The only
site,
good
right?
reason I could think of was that he didn't want to have to worry about making sure that they were the most up-to-date versions of all those things at all times.
That would
Right.
be
It's
obnoxious
probably
to worry
that.
about,
And again, like I said, the bandwidth
Right.
of extra data being downloaded from his own host. I don't know.
Okie dokie.
He
That's-
figured most
yeah.
people would just
what
go
they
get the
need.
ones they needed
Right.
from the various public places that they're at.
Right.
Okay, done interrupting.
Right. So essentially, there are no object files. There's no spin files that come that you can assume are there, like Parallax Serial Terminal or Ping or any of the previous ones that they would have in the prop tool library. So now you're like, okay, well now there's no library folder. So when I'm calling an object, where does it look? Cool thing about BST is you can actually designate where it looks. And what you want to do is
You can probably do that on the prop tool as well.
You can.
I guess you can. I haven't tried because I haven't had to worry about it,
Right.
but feature. So that's why I'm saying it. So on this program, you just, in the top finder bar, you click BST and then a compiler preferences window will pop up. Or you can go to compiler preferences and the window will pop up. Select search paths, and whatever folder you decide to add, whatever directory you add to that will be where the BST searches first for OBJs before looking at other locations. And your project files can go into that. All your files, all your spin files can go into that. So, voila. Easy,
Yep.
right? Yeah. So that's the
See, it sounds like you got past the main hurdles there. You got it installed, you got it talking to your prop, and you got your libraries directory working so that it knew where to look when you do things like use Parallax Serial Terminal Object.
correct. And so the first thing that we're still going through all the basic modules. So last week we finished with ping. Some ping code analysis, and there are a few questions that I'll have to do an addendum post in the blogs, but we'll save that for the blogs. so this week we're actually moving on to the five position switch, I want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Yeah. So the 5 position switch, and this one allows your project, whatever it can be, to read up, left, right, down, and center, which is just by clicking.
Yeah, it's basically the same thing as having 5 buttons independently positioned, and it's just in a nice little small package.
Right.
With a little button that slides to the 4 directions, or if you press it.
Now,
But it's exactly the same physically as 5 independent switches hooked up to the pins.
okay. Can we talk a little about the architecture of this? Because there are 8, what looks like 8 pins to a 5-pin switch. That seems like a lot to me.
I've never used their 5-pin switch. Let me look it up.
So I'm still more of an expert than you are.
Well, I mean, I happen to know that it's 5 position. It's just 5 switches. I think it's got, there's obviously a common ground for
Right.
probably, they might have separate grounds for the push button versus the other 4 buttons, but I'm not sure. I need to go look up their schematic.
Okay.
That would add up, right? Because you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, and that accounts for your positive lines. 5 for your positive line on the push button.
Yeah.
And then grounds for your directions, which is all a common ground. And
You
then
have one
a
ground. You have a ground.
There's only one ground
Yeah.
coming off the whole thing?
Yeah.
Huh.
So
there is something extra in there.
Yeah, I know. So there's a ground, there's a VCC, and I'm just wondering of this last.
Oh, it must be the
It's got a VCC?
Yeah, it does. It has a ground and it has a VCC.
Huh.
Mm-hmm. And then it has a little.
Let me go look it up in the store.
Does it have like built-in debouncing or something?
I have no idea.
I don't know.
It has a little beauty mark though. It's a dot on the side of the one that is a mystery. It's a mystery
while
pin.
Roy's looking up the schematic for that, any thoughts on using it?
I really like it. I mean, I use the kickstarts, and if you haven't already,
What did you do with it so far?
I've just made it talk to the Parallax serial, or not the Parallax serial terminal, but Brad's serial terminal to Brad Spin Tools serial terminal.
Did you
to show what up, right, left, down.
Did you just use that because it was built in to your programming tool, or?
What do you mean?
I know several people said that they use putty.
Yeah. So I just used it because Brad's Spin Tool already has a serial terminal.
Okay.
So and we'll go into the code in a little bit, but the code itself, well, I guess I can touch on it. The code is written for someone with a PC, someone with like Parallax serial terminal, right? So it uses the Parallax serial terminal object, and it calls PST, or it sends information to quote PST whenever you press a button. So if you press up,
serial terminal is a standard. Okay, they all work exactly the same.
Exactly?
Yeah, as long as the baud rate is the same, it's sending the exact same bits.
Oh.
Right.
So whether or not you're talking to a Parallax serial terminal program on the PC, putty on Linux or Mac, or the one that you used, which was the
built into BST.
Yeah.
That has a serial terminal built in.
And there's many others as well.
Yeah.
It's a very, very, very standardized thing, and it has been for longer than I've been alive.
I see. So even when the code is using the Parallax serial terminal.spin in its object, that should theoretically actually be labeled serial terminal.
What the Parallax serial terminal is an object that knows how to speak that standard that is the same no matter what.
Yeah, it's really, they named it Parallax. I think part of the reason they name it Parallax serial terminal is just sort of an indicator for easy new users that you run the Parallax serial terminal on your computer to see the output from parallax serial terminal in your spin code, but it's just standard serial communication.
I see.
So in fact, you can use parallax serial terminal to talk to an LCD display plugged into the right pins on the prop, or you could talk to some other serial device with parallax serial terminal. It's just a serial terminal program.
And I, for example, have mentioned this a few times, that I actually took the parallax serial terminal object and changed a couple of things on how it behaves. Sometimes it likes to use zeros as a terminator for delimited stuff.
Okay.
And I don't like delimited protocols. I like length-based protocols.
Okay.
So I changed it so that I could send essentially packets back and forth over serial to my own custom serial programs that I write myself from scratch running on the PC. So I'm using that serial terminal object with just a tiny bit of modification to talk to, whatever program. And the modification really doesn't have anything to do with my ability to do that. I'm just changing a little bit how it deals with packets.
Okay, so how do you end up doing that with an LCD? You just do LCD and then you set the baud rate?
We'll see, like the LCD display, that one of the ones that Parallax sells has a serial backpack plugged into it.
Okay.
So it talks standard serial, TTL serial. So if you plug it into the right pins on your propeller and tell the Parallax serial terminal, go to those pins instead.
Oh. So you would edit the object
using, which you would do. Well, no, you can start with your own. You can, instead of saying start baud rate, you can say start RxTX and tell it the pins for the receive and transmit as well as the baud rate.
There's a couple of different ways to do everything with the serial terminal object, the parallax serial terminal object. There's the one that you use to start, the command that you use. There's a couple. I think there's at least one other one. There might be two.
There's just two. There's two total. There's start with baud rate, which is the simple one, which assumes you're just using the standard pins 30 and 31 to talk over the USB port back out of the chip, like if it's on a standard board. But you can also call start RxTX, and you tell it the pins and the mode and the baud rate.
Which is how I usually
pins, mode, baud rate.
Right. And mode is for like inverting and open drain. It's like some special stuff that you normally don't need to set. You just leave it 0.
Yeah, I always use 0.
Interesting.
And but you can specify the two pins for receive and transmit, and then you could use it on some other pins and talk to other devices that use standard serial communication.
Okay. 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 I'll have to play around with that because I didn't realize it was that easy. And actually, it might be worth it for us to go through parallax serial terminal.spin.
I'm sure you'll get
Unless
to that point eventually. I think it runs assembly at the bottom there. There's a lot of like glue code in there that you would be able to figure out what it was doing there.
Now, some of the things that it provides are specific to parallax serial terminals code on the PC. Like there's move up and move down commands in there that send a particular character code out that the PC program is designed to interpret that code into moving the cursor around. Right.
And of course, that's the sort of stuff that I took out of my version.
Right. But it's if you don't use any of those things, then you can just talk to standard serial devices, right? That's one of the things. Like the parallax serial terminal software actually has some stuff that is specific to parallax serial terminal, but if you don't use it, then it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
Right.
And even if you did use it, you're just going to get a couple of weird characters spit out into putty or whatever.
Okay.
Right.
Because it's all just ASCII characters at the end of the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for those who want to use Brad's spin, the BST serial terminal, if you select the spin tool and you go to view serial terminal, there's a couple things you have to do. You have to select port and select which port it is. Just a matter of like putting a check mark next to that, whatever comes up. and then communicate and connect. If you don't connect it, and I think every time you have to connect it before the serial terminal will start reading whatever from
You could use that to talk to your XBs, for example.
your project. That's true. That is true. And that actually might be handier because usually I restart the prop BOE, but instead I could just take this terminal, disconnect it, and then reconnect it, and then, not have to do the electrical disconnect, which I don't particularly care for. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Sort of.
Sort of. Okay.
In your way of doing things, it does.
Okay. So did you find the pin and what?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So what it is there's 8 pins. One of them is not connected.
To what? Anything?
It's just not connected.
Anything?
Pin 1 is NC, not connected.
Why?
Because it's just they didn't want to have it be 7 pins with an odd pin out. It just makes it more sturdy when you stick it in a breadboard or something.
Oh, that's it?
Right? Just even. So there's 5
So
pins.
it really is a beauty mark.
So it wouldn't be like a 3-legged dog, is what he's saying.
Right. Yeah. So it's got 5 pins hooked up to the switches.
Mm-hmm.
And then the one pin that's hooked up to ground has 5 resistors going to those same lines to pull the signals down to ground.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other pin, the VCC pin, is going to the other side of the switches. And so when you push a switch, it runs power to the pin.
I see. Yes.
So it does the pull down mechanism.
So it does have some rudimentary debouncing there.
Well, it's not really
Not
It's just-
full blown debouncing, just pulling down. But
It just has a pull down on the resistor, on the pins for when your switch isn't pressed.
keeps it from
And the
floating.
part of the reason they did that mechanism is so that you could feed it with either 3.3 volts or 5 volts or whatever you want to be the voltage that gets sent to the pins. And that makes it easier to interface with some of their other products like the basic stamp, which runs at 5 volts. You can feed 5 volts into the VCC and get 5 volts on each pin.
So it's naturally pulled
Or with
down, and then when you
Yeah.
press it, then it allows the power to go through.
It goes to positive, yeah.
Okay.
And you could actually, because I'm looking at the schematic now, you could actually wire it the opposite way around if you wanted to. You
Mhm.
could put, you could have it be pulled up,
Okay.
and the switches would pull it down.
Okay.
And to do that,
To
you'd
ground.
be attaching your voltage
So it would be on
to the
at all
ground
times.
pin, and you'd be connecting.
Attaching ground to VCC.
Oh, interesting.
And it will, you just have to know to write your code
Because
to read it the opposite way.
resistors don't care about polarity. So
Right.
Okay. So why don't we look at the code then? Because the code sounds opposite to what you're saying, but I might be completely off the mark. Does that work?
Okay. If you want
Actually,
to.
I'm looking at the code, and it looks exactly like that.
Well, I might be interpreting it wrong. So let's go through it.
This is not how I would have written it. Who wrote this?
I don't know.
It's probably some sample code.
It's the Kickstart code.
The sample code writers need to learn how to use case.
Case?
Yes.
What's wrong with case?
I never see them use case. Use case, people. It's better
Oh.
than having a bunch of if statements in a row because you can handle weird things,
Yeah, but this is for
Right.
beginners. I like the step by
I
step.
think part of the reason they did it this way is because it's from the Kickstart thing and they didn't want to introduce complex programming.
It's not that complex, though.
For you,
For
being an
you.
expert programmer, for me, I mean, but for somebody
Like
who's
me.
totally new to programming, if is a little simpler than
Yes.
explaining case and
I agree.
Boo.
I agree.
boo.
But we can simplify it soon.
Boo on you, Roy.
Okay, focus. So the object here is PST, Parallax Serial Terminal. And at first I thought I needed to do BST.
Well, it's
But-
adding an object in at the top of the code. It's adding a serial terminal.
Right.
So we're not talking about the serial terminal. We're talking about how can they find this?
This code is in the kickstart, the propeller kickstarts for the 5-position switch.
5-position switch.
Yep.
And what's it called?
I might have had that
Sample.
backwards. It might be pulling them up instead of down.
It's called 5-position switch.
Yeah.
If you just go to it and you go down, you scroll down to the propeller quick start code, or the propeller spin code for the 5-position switch. I just copy pasted it.
Okay, that's pretty easy to
So
find.
that's it.
So yeah, it looks like Roy. It's going through a repeat loop, blah blah blah, checking the NA on each one of the pins that you're connecting the switches to.
Mm-hmm.
And
No, I'm looking at this. So the schematic isn't fully labeled to which pins are which.
Okay.
So it's kind of hard to tell which way is ground and which way is VCC. But based on that code,
Yeah.
it looks like it's actually being pulled up, and when you push the button, it grounds it to pull it down.
Right. That's why I was wondering about the opposite.
So that's probably the default way that it's hooked up. And like I said, it's not well labeled.
So did Whisker get it wrong?
Well, Roy and I both said that it could go either direction.
You can actually
Electrically,
wire
it
it
would
either
work.
way, but
the code is
the
doing
default.
it.
Well, the default way, based on their labeling, it looks like it's pulled up, and when you push the buttons, it pulls down.
And the expert Roy was the one who initially said that it was pulled up or pulled
Well,
down.
whatever.
Not the
Yeah.
expert
That's why I
Whisker.
wanted to go through the code. So let's go step by
Whisker. The expert
step.
Whisker was just like they do that so that it doesn't float. So the pin that it's attached to doesn't float.
I understand, Whisker.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay. All right. So OBJ, first parallax serial terminal. So for those using Brad's spin tool, you have to actually go to the OBX and download this and then stick it in your folder because it doesn't really come with Brad's spin tool. So that's what I did. I went downloaded parallax serial terminal.spin, put it in my folder. That's that. Con section, the constant, we got the clock mode, which we all know, the XN freak, we all know that. Now, would it matter if I put XN freak is 80,000? Or
Yeah, because
80, whatever.
because
8 million?
XN freak is the actual crystal frequency
Okay.
coming in.
Okay.
You can do clock freak, CLK freak as 80,000 or 80 million.
Okay. All right. Got it.
You can only set one or the other of XN or clock in.
Okay.
And clock frequency or XN.
Okay.
Freak.
All right. Just double checking because I think I have some code
We
that has
covered
the 80.
that way long time ago.
I know. But
I
I
think
was,
Addie needs to go back and listen to First Spin.
well, I was just thinking
I've
of
heard
like,
that show's really good for this kind of material.
I was just thinking because I know I have some code where there's 80 million megahertz somewhere there and
80 million
Right.
megahertz.
whatever. Hertz.
80 million.
80
some
million
people,
hertz.
Some people prefer to use the clock freak equals 80 million and let it calculate XN freak. But you can do it the other way around.
Okay.
I prefer to have it define what the actual crystal is and let it calculate the frequency.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay, and then DIRA 0 to 4, so pins 0 through 4 are set to an input, input being represented by the single tilde.
Yep.
BST start, that's just saying, okay, we'll start at the baud rate of 115,200. And on the terminal, make sure you select that the baud rate is 115,200, right? Yeah. Otherwise, it won't work. So
It's more like make sure you set it to whatever you're setting it to on whatever serial terminal you're using.
yep. Okay, so then we have wait count, clock freak plus CNT, which is the system will wait for 1 second, right?
Uh-huh.
Because it's the current clock cycle plus clock freak, which is the number of clock cycles that 1 second
80,000
makes up.
kilocycles.
80 million.
80,000 kilocycles.
Yeah, or
Whiskers.
80 million cycles.
Whiskers being difficult. Okay,
And
and then I know we have to wrap this up because we're almost out of time.
Actually, yeah, we are.
Yeah, almost. Okay.
It's so
So
sad.
if in a 0 or 1 or 2 or 3, if any of these pins see a 0, which is how you know it's pulled high normally, right?
no, pulled high is 1 and 0 equals it's been pulled down by going to ground.
Oh, so if you're pressing the button and it's going to ground,
Then it will read a 0 on the NA pin.
okay.
Otherwise, it'll read a 1 because it's pulled high. They're like I was saying earlier. I misread the schematic because it wasn't labeled correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It does not labeled at all for those
Mhm.
2 pins. So the resistors are all pull-up resistors.
That's what I meant, like
Right,
by the resistors being pulled. Okay, right.
Right.
So when you press the button, it pulls it down
To zero.
Yeah. The propeller sees that, and then it'll send accordingly to the serial terminal whatever you did.
Whatever button was pressed. Yeah.
Right. So whether that's down, left, right. And then after all that good stuff, then you wait about a third of a second, and then it starts all over again.
Right. It just loops around forever, reading all the buttons and printing out the result.
Right.
Not super complicated.
Nope.
Right.
And between the pull up and the timing of checking, you've essentially got yourself a debounce there.
Right. Because this is spin code, so reading this stuff is actually taking several microseconds. And so the value will be zero because it's been zero for a while. And if it happens to bounce a couple times in the middle, you probably won't catch it because spin is going slow enough that it won't see it.
But you can make it faster. You can slow down the wait count, can't you?
Well, yeah, but even
if you did.
even if you had no wait,
Oh.
spin is still taking several microseconds per instruction to do its thing.
Electrically, the switch is going to stabilize in on or off by the time that comes around again.
Oh.
Right.
I see.
You might occasionally get a one bounce or so when reading with spin.
Okay.
And you could actually add a capacitor in there, a decoupling capacitor, to reduce the noise and eliminate that too.
I see.
So, like they were saying, that's all the time we have for this week, sadly.
That's fast.
But if you guys have any questions about working with spin on the Mac or 5-position switch and stuff you can do with it, please send it in to feedback@tymkrs.com, or send them over on Twitter
Or the comments for
at
First Spin.
TYMKRS.
Yep.
And
we haven't gotten any questions yet.
Yeah,
I
you
know.
guys are totally slacking. So
Or like we're answering all their questions in advance.
maybe we're just that good. Yeah, I like it. Okay, so you guys can find this show every Tuesday. You probably already know that. You can find links on the website firstspin.tv to either download it, watch it on the page, or subscribe to it with your iTunes, your phone, whatever you want to listen to. I know a lot of people like to have their phone automatically download it and have their car automatically play it when they get in.
Yep.
And listen to it on the way to and from work.
Correct.
It's a pretty fun way to kill your commute with a little bit of Whisker Addy Roy fun.
Yep.
All right, that's it for this week. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye.
Later.